A very good evening to all the participants who've joined us. We'll be starting the session very shortly, maybe in another couple of minutes. very good evening to everybody who's joined us. Firstly, on behalf of ISHRE Bangalore chapter, we trust and hope you're all well and safe. Our earnest regards to everybody. As we just saw from the video, ACREX is scheduled to be in Bangalore next year. So if you're keen to participate with us, please write to ISHRE Bangalore chapter. And I would also request all of you who are not members of ISHRE to please sign up and avail all the benefits of our technical talks and non-technical talks that we schedule. Without further ado, let's start the session for the day today, which will be on pump basics in HVAC pumping systems by Mr. Ravi Kodli. Mr. Ravi has over 18 years of experience in pumps, valves, and WTP industry as in sales support, application engineering, technical support, and sales. He is currently working with Armstrong since 2009. He started with Armstrong in their technical support team, where he was responsible for application and sales support activities for Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. He took on the role of regional manager in 2016 and is responsible for sales activities for South and South Asia. He has over 15 years of experience in HVAC pumping systems and control systems, with experience in plant room design with respect to pumping and control systems. Sir, a very warm welcome and over to you.
Yeah. Before that, I'll just play one membership video.
Yeah, sure, Girish, please. Thank you, Girish. Over to you, Ravi, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Nisha. I hope my screen is visible.
Not yet.
Yeah, one second.
You are audible. Yes, it's visible now.
Yeah. Thank you, ISHRE Bangalore chapter, for giving me the opportunity for having this technical presentation. And thank you all the participants for taking out the time and attending this presentation. The basic agenda of this presentation is to have a detailed discussion or to have a presentation on pump basics and then HVAC related pumping systems. I will be taking through the presentation and we will have question and answer sessions. Please make a note of questions. In between you have anything, definitely we'll have a detailed discussion with the permissible time, allowable time. To start with, this is the agenda. I'll be taking you guys through the introduction to the pumping system, then classification of the pumps, and then working principle and basic parts of the pumps, then pump basic terms and the curves, how to read the curves, and what are the terminologies involved in the curves, and then one more two important factors which are associated pumps are the pump efficiency and NPSH. I'll just take you through the details of these 2 points as a special topic. Then affinity law, which is applicable for centrifugal pumps, and then type of the pumps and comparison of various pumps, and maybe a small introduction with respect to which one would be the better selection with respect to our HVAC industry. And then a small couple of 2 to 3 slides where I will be taking you through the schematics where pumps are positioned in a HVAC schematic system. In between anything is that, as I mentioned, please make a note of it And at the end of the session, we'll have a detailed discussion. So what is the pump? Basically, general terminology we might have heard, pump, which is used for transfer of water. In general terms, as a common man, everybody knows that pump is used for transferring water from our domestic application, some to overhead. Similarly, the pump is a device which is which moves the fluids or slurries by mechanical action, typically converted from an electrical energy. Pump will have a driver, which will be basically a motor. In some specific applications, engine will drive the pumps, and that energy, electrical energy, is converted into mechanical energy, which helps to move the fluid from one location to other location, which converts the fluid electrical energy into a hydraulic energy. In HVAC terms, we can say it creates flow in our system, chilled water system. It creates pressure in the chilled water system, and it is used for transfer, like cooling tower application, where water is pumped from condenser loop to cooling tower and again back to the condenser loop. So basically, it creates a flow into the system, creates pressure into the system, and transfers the water. So you can be able to see the typical sketch where we are seeing the water is being sucked from some and being transferred to the tank. So the pump will transfer or creates a movement and transfers the fluid from one level to other level. And the typical terminology for HVAC, it creates flow rate, it creates pressure, and it transfers the water as well. Classification of pumps. Basically, if you see the broader classification of the pumps, we have positive displacement pumps, which are having arrangement for movement of physical movement of the liquid through either a piston or kind of engine arrangement where the fluid is sucked and pushed, which creates the acceleration to the liquid. And in case of gear pumps, where the rotary rotation between the gears physically shifts the liquid from one position to other position. So positive displacement pumps are generally where there is a physical action exerted on the fluid to transfer it from one level to the other level or create the pressure. In case of positive displacement pumps, generally these pumps are used for transferring of viscous liquids or heavy liquids, and generally these pumps are not used for water transfer applications. In second classification, we have centrifugal or dynamic pumps, wherein the pumps are transferring water from one level to the other level by centrifugal action, where there will be a rotating element, which will be a prime mover, which will rotate the impeller, basically impeller in a centrifugal pump, which creates a motion to the liquid, and it transfers from one level to the next level, creates flow or creates pressure. In case of centrifugal pumps, again, we have single stage and multi-stage pumps. 99% of our HVAC industry, we use single stage pump, where you will have single impeller in the pump. Multi-stage pumps are used for high pressure applications like our plumbing pumps or multi-stage pumps, wherein you need to create pressure in the water. And then in case of again centrifugal pumps, we have horizontal design pump as well as vertical type design pumps as well. I think you can be able to see my cursor. This is the one which is a centrifugal pump where the water enters from axial side and creates pressure in centrifugal action. These are the positive displacement pumps where the liquid is pushed from a piston like this from one level to the other level. Working principle of a centrifugal pump, as I told, all of our HVAC pumps where we use the pumps are centrifugal pumps, where the liquid is transferred from one level to the other level by centrifugal action. So there will be a rotating element. This is the shaft wherein the impeller is mounted. This is the impeller, and water enters from eye of the impeller from here, eye of the impeller, and impeller will have vanes which will guide the water since it is moving in a high RPM like 1450 or 2900 RPM. The centrifugal action created from eye of the impeller, water moves towards the vanes and it is guided through the volute of the pump. So when water enters the volute, it is called as volute as well as diffuser. By centrifugal action, water is pressurized through volute and guided to exit of the pump, wherein it will have pressurized water which will displace from one place to the other place. So main parts of the pumps, as I explained, it is a typical cut section of a end section pump where you will have impeller, you will have casing, you will have bearings and the shaft. Here the prime mover, that is motor or engine, is connected. So water enters from here. Since impeller is rotating, it creates a centrifugal action which will guide the water through the volute of the casing and exits from the discharge side of the pump. When it comes to the basic terminology of pumps, the pump's performance or any parameters are referred through the pump performance curves. So it is important for us to know the parameters or the terminology which is used for reading a typical centrifugal pump performance curve. This is a typical centrifugal pump performance curve where you can be able to see this axis is y-axis, which is mentioning the head values, x-axis mentioning the flow values, and the flow and head are the pumps typically are selected with the pump performance curves, wherein you can be able to see this is the specified duty parameter of the pump. So any designer or any requirement for a pump will have to have flow and head. So that flow and head is typically selected in a particular pump curve, which is called as specified duty point. Then the pump, any kind of pump for that matter, are identified by the suction and discharge sizes as well as the impeller sizes. For example, you require a pump of 1000 US GPM at 20 meters head. When we select a typical pump with this performance curves, you will be having the pumps are selected based on flow rate, which decides the suction size of the pump, this size, and the head value. The head value is decided based on the impeller size. The bigger the impeller, you will have more head. That is relation is arrived by affinity law. So when a typical pump requirement comes, it will be requiring minimum parameters like flow and head, which is required out of the pump, based on which I will be selecting a pump typically for this duty parameter. For example, this is the duty parameter. So when we select the duty parameter with a particular size of the pump is selected, it will have fixed impeller sizes. See, this is the minimum impeller size, this is the maximum impeller size of a particular pump, which is selected for your duty parameter. The curve which touches on the y-axis is called shut-off head. So when you close the valve on the discharge side of the pump will keep on generating head, but it will not give any flow because you are obstructing the discharge side of the pump. So that point, what is the maximum pressure or maximum head attained? That is called closed valve pressure or shut-off head. This value is maximum diameter shut-off head. This is the minimum diameter of the pump, and this is the minimum shut-off head. And each and every pump will be having a best efficiency point. Because so this the efficiency where the maximum value of the efficiency is arrived is called best efficiency point of a pump. This is the duty parameter, as I told. And then where the pump curve ends on the flow side, it is called runout flow, where pump cannot take beyond this value of the flow rate for a particular size of the pump which is selected. And then we have preferred area of operation, because pumps will have typically the efficiency. This is the best efficiency, as I told. The efficiency keep on dropping as you move towards the right hand side of the curve. Efficiency keeps on dropping towards the as you move towards the left hand side of the curve as well. So this is a particularly a best efficiency point, this one. So efficiency keeps on dropping as you move towards left hand side of the curve, as well as left hand side of the BEP, as well as right hand side of the BEP. So typically whenever we are selecting the pump, we always prefer to select pump very close to the best efficiency point. There are ASHRAE guidelines which defines what is the minimum range, maximum range at beyond BEP point at which pump has to be selected. So this y-axis, this values are efficiency values, wherein you can be able to see the curve, how the efficiency behaves. And then there is something called minimum continuous flow. For a particular size of selected pump in a fixed impeller diameter, what is the minimum flow it can take, beyond which it is not advisable to operate the pump? That is also particularly marked here, or we can be able to guess the point based on the efficiency levels, wherein we try to have, say, minimum 45-50% of efficiency of the pump, based on which the pump has to be run with the minimum efficiency. And then we have something called power curve, which is typically shown here, or generally power curves are also shown in the single curve itself. So this power curve ranges from 0 to the maximum flow of the pump, and power keeps on increasing as you start drawing more power from the pump. So this is the power curve with respect to your flow as well as head. So flow decides the increase in power. And then there is something called NPSH, which I will take you in my next slides. So NPSH curve also is plotted with respect to your flow rate. Each and every pump will have the net positive suction head required by the pump. So that value, based on that value, during the development stage of the pumps itself, pumps are type tested and this NPSH curve is drawn. So this is a typical pump performance curve for a centrifugal pump. For, say, for example, in this case, we have selected a pump of 840 US-GPM at 23 meters head. So this is the duty point at which the pump is selected. These are the efficiency curves. This is the pump performance curve. This is the minimum diameter of the curve. This is the maximum diameter of the curve. These are the power curves. So typical power curves are shown either in this way, or as my previous slide showed, there will be a separate power curve as well as NPSH curve. So this is the best efficiency point. So for this duty parameter, maybe a 6-inch pump with around 292. In this case, it is 292 mm impeller diameter selected based on the required flow and head. As I told, flow decides your size of the pump, which is 6-inch here in this case, and head decides the diameter of the impeller. So based on this one, here typically we have selected this pump for 840 US-GPM at 23 meters head. And what are the parameters being captured when we are having a pump performance curves are the NPSH values. The NPSH is net positive suction head required, efficiency of the pump, then absorbed power of the pump. Absorbed power is nothing but BKW. To have a flow and head of this 840 at 23, what is the typical power required? Here in this case, it is 14.24. Based on absorbed power, we arrive at the motor size. So here in this case, the absorbed power is 14.24, and any pump motor design should have, say, around 10% motor safety factor. So 14.24 into 1.1, if you take, the next available size of the motor is 18.5 kilowatts. So in this case, pump is selected with based on the absorbed power, motor is sized for 18.5 kilowatt. And then the gap between your BKW and motor power will give you the motor safety factor. We have cushion of 16.92% for power. Your absorbed power is 14.24. My motor sizing is 18.5. The cushion, which is called as motor safety factor, is 16.92. And what is the BEP? BEP point is somewhere around 84.32%. So these are the basic parameters which are captured when you are selecting a pump, and these are the factors which we refer when we are referring to any selection of the pump, or when we are filling any data sheets for our requirements to calculate the complete power consumptions, or calculating the plant efficiencies or plant power requirements. These are the basic parameters which are to be observed or noted for a typical pump selection. When it comes to variable speed pumping, where pumps is being driven by a VFD, so you need to have variable speed flow and head data, because 99% we are operating in a variable pumping system itself in our HVAC industry, where load keeps on varying and we keep on varying the load speed of the pump, by which the flow and head data are controlled. So in this typical variable speed pumping, pump always tends to operate along with this green line, which is called a system resistance curve, along with which the pump operates. Suppose you reduce the RPM from here, typically it is operating at 50.7 hertz. Suppose you require lesser flow, lesser head based on your load. Say your load is 80%, you don't require this design duty parameter. So in this case, typically pump should operate maybe at 46.2 hertz, which will be drawing you particular lower flow and lower head. Similarly, when we are referring to any variable load pump curve, we will have various points wherein you will have part load, flow and head, as well as efficiency data being plotted by all the pump manufacturer. So this will give you complete details at what flow, what head, what frequency a pump is operating. So these data are used for calculating our part load power requirements, part load efficiencies for the complete plant equipment. So whenever you are selecting a pump, if it is a variable speed application, please make a note of this variable speed load details also. So two points which I want to highlight for any pump selection or any pump particular pump parameters is, one is efficiency. So whatever pumps we are selecting or whatever specifications we are getting in the market for a typical pump requirements for HVAC, we are defining efficiency. We have flow head. Flow is calculated based on your chiller capacities, or your, in case of your secondary pump, based on your installed load capacities, you are arriving at your primary and secondary pump flow rates. And similar way, in cooling tower application, based on your cooling tower load, you will be arriving at cooling tower condenser pump flow and head. So you have basically flow head parameters in your hand. And generally, when we are designing any HVAC plant, efficiency also is a very big factor which decides our total say IKW per TR output of the chilled water plant. So in this case, whenever designing consultants or designing engineers are designing a particular pumping system, they will have minimum efficiency criteria also defined for particular pumps. So basically, whatever efficiency figures we are giving in terms of pumps is the output by input. So output is nothing but we are getting flow and head out of the pump, which is an output. So head and flow into specific gravity. Specific gravity is 1 for water in our HVAC industry, or maybe whenever we are using pumps for brine application or any pharma or industrial cooling application where people are adding ethylene glycol or monoethylene glycol kind of thing, the small variation on the specific gravity will happen. So whenever we are calculating the output of the pump, head flow and specific gravity divided by this 3960 constant. It's a constant used for converting the head and flow parameters into a percentage value. And then what is the input? Input, whatever we are giving is the brake horsepower. Like what is the power required for the pump to perform that flow head. So in this case, the shaft power available is the power required for generating flow head will get hydraulic efficiency of the pump. So particularly when we are calculating input power to the motor, or if the pump is driven by VFD, input power to the VFDs. So that is called overall efficiency of the pump. So in that case, we have to add the losses in the motor for this hydraulic efficiency calculated, as well as the losses from the VFDs also to be added. So whenever we are calculating, say for example, my hydraulic efficiency of a pump is around 80%, and then I am using a IE3 motor which is having a efficiency of 95%. So I'll be adding those losses of 5%. So 80 divided by 0.95 will give me the overall efficiency of the pump. And if it is a VFD driven pump, say I have another 2% losses on the VFDs. So 80 divided by 0.95, again overall divided by 0.98 give me the overall input power or overall efficiency of the pump as a whole unit. So efficiency criteria generally are specified by the designers based on their overall plant efficiency designs, based on the requirements. And as a pump supplier or pump manufacturer, we people tend to select pumps within that efficiency range. And theoretically, the efficiencies are calculated based on head flow, specific gravity, and your motor as well as VFD losses. One more terminology which is very important for our HVAC industry to be concentrated is the net positive suction head required by the pumps. So what is NPSH basically? The NPSH value is basically the pressure or the suction pressure required by the pump to operate without any cavitation. So basically, when one thing I want to emphasize is all the pumps which are used in our HVAC industry are non-self-priming pumps. Pumps cannot suck the water. This is a typical sketch I have shown, but pumps cannot suck the water from lower level of the pump. We should have a positive suction of in the suction side of the pump to have smooth operation of the pumps. All the pumps, whatever we are using in our HVAC industry, are non-self-priming pumps. So particularly whenever pumps are being designed, the pump should have minimum pressure required on the suction side of the pump to function without any cavitation or sucking of the air. Basically, cavitation is nothing but the vibration created by the impeller due to sucking of the air, since air or vapor, whatever you can say. So whenever pump is being operated, it should have a minimum suction pressure on the suction of the pump. So that value is called NPSH required by the pump. That is called NPSH-R. This is a design parameter of a pump. Whenever we are designing the pump, the particular NPSH value is being tested typically when we are prototyping, testing the pumps for the design stage and drawing these curves. Any particular pump, I'll go back to my previous slide. You can be able to see here the value NPSH-R is 2.69. For that particular duty of 840 USGPM at 23 meters head, the net positive suction head required by this pump, particularly selected pump, is 2.69, meaning you should have 2.69 as a minimum pressure available on the suction side of the pump to have a smooth operation of the pump. So this is NPSH-R, which is a design parameter of the pump. So when it comes to NPSH-A, that is called available at the site. Whenever we are installing a pump in a particular HVAC scheme or any other general pump applications, we should know what is the suction pressure available at a section of the pump based on our installation layout. In HVAC, the primary pumps or the secondary pumps are a closed loop system where we are pressurizing the complete closed loop system to have minimum pressure required by the system. So if you physically measure the suction side of the primary pump or suction side of the secondary pump, what is the pressure available due to the pressurized system is called NPSH available. When it comes to cooling tower pumps, our cooling tower is, say for example, it is on terrace and pumps are in basement one. So what is the suction pressure exerted by the water column built from your cooling tower exit to the pump suction is called net positive suction available. In a typical sketch where I have shown here it is the sum, and then this is the suction of the pump. So what is the pressure available here is called net positive suction available at the site. So this net positive suction head available is calculated based on your atmospheric pressure, which is acting on the fluid if it is an open loop system. So atmospheric pressure of 10 meter, which is water. See, if you see any pipe which is with this typical arrangement, you can be able to see automatically water column is rising because the atmospheric pressure keeps on acting on the water column. So that 10 meters is always available on the suction side of the atmospheric pressure is available due to the water pressure, atmospheric pressure. So any losses on the suction side of the pipe plus the vertical height which the water has to travel has to be deducted from your atmospheric pressure available to get you the net positive suction head available on the suction side of the pump. You can be able to have a formula. You can be able to get it in your books, reference boxes, or Google also you can search. You can see the formula available for NPSH calculation, which is very simple. The atmospheric pressure minus the vertical height minus the frictional losses on the suction side of the pump will give you the net positive suction head available at the site. If you have this sump level on the higher side, that is above the pump eye of the impeller, so you have to add that height, whatever particular height which is generated due to the water column, you have to add that atmospheric pressure plus the height of the liquid which is above the pump eye level minus the frictional losses of the pipe side will give you the net positive suction head available at the site. And please be noted that always your NPSH available should be greater than NPSH required by the pump to have a smoother operation of the pump. If your NPSH levels are lower in HVAC, typical HVAC applications, we face this problem whenever say our cooling tower is on the terrace as well as pumps are on the terrace. Our cooling tower is on the same level of the where pump is installed, cooling tower pump. There we tend to face these problems because the required NPSH value at that particular point may be higher than available at the site. So it tend to suck the air from the atmosphere and cavity at the pump. Pump will start vibrating, excessive vibration of the pump happens, and which will lead to the lower flow rates, lower heads from the pump. So please ensure that your net positive suction head available at the site is always higher than net positive suction head required by the pump. So this is a basic pump affinity law which I was defining. This is a very basic law which correlates various parameters of the pump. Any particular pump, if you see, will have flow head as basic parameters, then RPM if it is a variable speed application, then impeller diameter if it is a constant speed application, then the power, what is the power drawn by the pump. So the affinity law which gives you the complete relation between flow, RPM, impeller diameters with respect to your heads, power drawn by the pump. So if you see typically when your diameter is constant, when you want to vary the RPM, so how the flow varies with respect to your RPM. Q1 and Q2 are directly proportional to RPM, whereas your head are proportional to square of the RPM, where your power varies with respect to cube of the RPM. So when you have a variable speed application pump, you want to arrive at different flow heads. Theoretically, you can be able to use these formulas to arrive at different flows at different RPMs, different heads at different RPMs, and different powers at different RPMs. Similarly, in case of a constant speed application where your impeller diameter is constant, you can be able to vary the diameter of the pump with respect to how the diameter of the pump is related to your flow, your head, as well as your power is defined in this affinity law. So whenever you want to have calculations for variable application or variable impeller diameter with respect to your flow, head, power, this is the basic typical affinity law which comes into picture for all the calculations. Any selection software for that matter, all the pump manufacturers are having are built on this basic formulas, which is called as pump affinity law. So you can have a detailed look at these affinity laws and try to calculate your various flow heads, powers based on either your RPM or based on your impeller size, and try to verify with any particular pump selection of any manufacturer. So this is the basic formula based on which all the selection softwares are built. I'll just quickly take you through typical type of the pumps, which is most of you might be familiar. So when it comes to HVAC application, as I told, we use centrifugal pumps only for our chilled water application or condenser water application. So when it comes to type of the pumps with respect to HVAC application, we have horizontal pumps as well as vertical inline pumps. So when it comes to horizontal pumps, again, we have classification as end section pumps and horizontal split case pumps. And when it comes to end section, again, we have long coupled as well as close coupled. Similarly, when it comes to vertical inline pumps, again, we have long coupled pumps and close coupled pumps. So I'll just quickly take you through type of the pumps with respect to their construction and features. So this is a typical end section pump, which is long coupled, where your pump and motor are typically connected through a coupling, which is mounted on a base plate. Here it is called as back pull out end section pump because the section of the pump is from one side and discharge is on the top side. So this is a typical section. This is a discharge. The impeller is mounted on a cantilever design pump shaft where you have a bearing assembly. The pump the shaft is supported by inward and outward bearings. Two bearings are used in any end section pump, long coupled pumps. So there will be a mechanical seal arrangement here, which prevents the leakage of the pump from its casing and shaft. This is the impeller. This is the eye of the impeller where water enters from one side of the impeller and will be discharged to the top side of the pump. So this is typical end section pump, and it is called as long coupled design because it has a coupling, separate coupling here, and pump and motors, pump shaft and motor shafts are coupled through a flexible spacer type long coupling, and this pump is basically mounted on a base plate. When it comes to short coupled pumps, you can be able to see there is no coupling here, either a shaft, stub shaft, which is directly mounted on the motor shaft, or in some cases the pump shaft extension or the long they will have a bigger pump shaft, motor shaft, on which the impeller is mounted. Again, this is a typical end section pump where your water is entering from one side and going on the other side. This is close coupled because there is no separate coupling. So the pump impeller is mounted on the motor shaft extension itself. So generally, these end section long coupled pumps are used for bigger, higher flow rates where you need to have bigger pump sizes. Close coupled pumps are used for very small circulation pump applications. When it comes to horizontal split case, you can be able to see this is a heavy duty pump wherein the pump is designed with a split casing. This is a split casing. Some manufacturers will have angled split, or some manufacturer will have horizontal split where casing is split. So whenever you want to access the internal parts, you can open these bolts and take out the casing, upper casing, to access typical parts of the pump. So that's why it is called a split casing pump. This pump is a heavy construction pump where you have motor and pump shafts are connected again through a long coupled design, and it will be mounted on a common base plate. The construction wise, this pump is as you see, end section pumps were cantilever, whereas the pump shaft, the impeller is mounted on two-sided supported pump shaft. So it will have two bearings, two mechanical seals. These are the mechanical seals. These are the two bearings on which the impeller is mounted. The advantage of this pump is it is having always a double section impeller, which will have better efficiencies in terms of performance. The disadvantage is that it has two mechanical seals, two bearings on the pump alone, and additionally it will have bearings on the motor side as well. So maintenance wise, it is a very heavy pump, and if you want to have maintenance of these pumps, you need to have complete opening of the casing and access the internal parts of the pumps. Vertical inline design pumps are available in the market where you have suction and discharge on the same side of the same line, where water enters on the suction side and goes on the discharge side. So here particularly this is inlet, this is outlet, the coupling. It is called as vertical design because the motor is mounted vertically on the pump side. So this design will allow you to have a pump installation, simple pump installation with respect to your space savings as well as maintenance wise, which I'll be taking you through further slides. This is a split couple design, where you have a separate split coupling on the pump and motor shaft, and this is the pump shaft, this is a motor shaft is connected to a split coupling. This is a close couple design again in a vertical inline where the motor shaft is extended, where the impeller is mounted, very similar to the close couple design of the end suction pump. Out of all this configuration, which one is better is the question which comes to all of us when we are designing any particular pumping system. So these are the criteria which are used for designing any efficient pumping system. Floor space, of course, we are all working in building segment where each and every space saved is a money saved for a builder or the user. Then ease of installation, the pump should be very easily installable, where quickly we can finish it off, make installation very simple. Maintenance wise, as building owner has to maintain these pumps for lifetime, the maintenance point of view should be very minimal whenever we are selecting a particular pump. And then of course the reliability, where your life of the pump should be long, which will give you good results in terms of your operation of the building. So whenever you come to end section pumps, a typical end section pump has to have a base plate. It has to have a foundation. Since these are all long coupled flexible coupling design, there will be a vibration out of these pumps. So you need to have flexible bellows for the pumps. So any end section pump, when you want to install, you need to have minimum of these components. And floor space wise, since it is a horizontal design, it requires bigger floor space compared to typical end section pumps. See, vertical inline pumps. So particularly when you are installing any vertical inline pump, it is a pipe mounted design. Most of the cases, either bellows are required or not required, depends on manufacturer to manufacturer. So these vertical inline pumps, since it is having a motor element on the top of the pump itself, so this definitely consumes very less space compared to a base mounted pump. So it will save you definitely floor space when you install these pumps compared to your end section pumps. This is a typical pump arrangement where vertical inline pumps are installed on the chiller section, or back of the pumps are installed with very less space. As a general calculation with our experience in the market, vertical inline saves 50% space compared to end section pumps and 78% space compared to horizontal split case pumps. And in terms of installation wise, which will be the easier pump? As I told, you need to consider ease of installation also. So end section pump require all these components, where it requires a base plate, it requires foundation, it requires flexible bellows, it requires inertia pads, it requires all these mounts to arrest the vibration, everything. So overall, when you want to install these pumps, you need to have all these components. Whereas when it comes to vertical inline pumps, you don't require any typical, as I told, it depends on manufacturer. Some vertical pumps may be required to support from the ground, some may not be required to support from the ground. But overall, when you consider vertical inline design, it requires very less installation effort, easily can be installed in the piping itself as compared to your end section pumps. And in terms of maintenance wise, when it comes to end section pump, it has a typical bearing assembly where it has two bearings, inward and outward bearings. And in addition to that one, you will have two separate motor bearings also. And since these pumps are mounted on a base plate, it requires realignment very frequently. General cases, once in 3 months, once in 4 months, we need to have a alignment check, since alignment go off. If misalignment happens, it tends to damage your bearings as well as mechanical seals, since it is a cantilever design. So when it comes to horizontal split case pumps, as I mentioned, it has 2 mechanical seals to be maintained, 2 bearings to be maintained. Again, it is a base mounted design pump. It definitely require alignment frequently. So maintainability wise, when it comes to typical vertical inline design, uh, the vertical inline by design itself has very few items, that is parts, which maybe some manufacturer will not have bearings on the pumps, and as well as your base plate is not there, your flexible coupling, in some manufacturer case flexible coupling itself is not there, it comes with the solid split coupling. So all these lesser number of parts make it easy for maintenance of the pumps when it typically compared with end section or horizontal split case pumping. In terms of reliability, as I told, vertical inline pumps have very less parts compared to your end section or horizontal split case pumps, which has higher life compared to conventional pumping systems. This has been published also in Hydraulic Institute standard, where they recommend people to go with vertical inline. So as I told, it all depends on project to project, wherein we select the pumps based on all the criteria in terms of performance, where you need to have better efficiency pumps, you need to have trouble-free operation pumps, you need to have ease of installation, you need to have low maintenance pumps, and more reliable pumps. So with all these criteria, we need to have we need to decide on what type of pumps we need to go for. So as I briefed, these are all the available options in the market as a pump options, which particular designers or users will select based on the plus and minuses of each type of the pump. So when as we are all working for HVAC industry, when it comes to a typical application side, where exactly these pumps are installed in a typical application wise, whatever pumps we are talking, all the centrifugal pumps are for chilled water application, where we'll be having a plant room where we have a chiller. So in a typical plant room, we have these evaporator pumps, which are called primary. And on the load side, we'll typically maybe having secondary pumps as well as tertiary pumps. I'll take you through in my couple of slides ahead, where I have shown what type of schemes we have in a typical HVAC system. And we have, if it is a water-cooled chiller, we have a cooling tower, condenser loop, where we have pumps are required for, again, cooling tower application. Also, any BOQ you see in a typical HVAC application, you will have primary pumps, secondary pumps, tertiary pumps, or condenser pumps. It depends on your scheme again, what kind of schematics we are deciding on the pumping side. And all these pumps are installed in the plant room along with chillers and cooling towers. So this is typically a primary system where this is your load, this is your chiller, and only the primary pumps are installed. There are no secondary pumps. So this primary will circulate the water from pumps to the loads, and the return water is coming back to the primary, where there are no other secondary pumps associated with this scheme. And there will be, of course, cooling tower pumps if it's a water-cooled chiller. So this variable primary system will have, for example, if you have variable load in a particular building, we can have these pumps as a variable primary system as well, which will cater the load based on the load variation in the system. So this is a very simple schematic where you will have only one set of pumps which will be catering the water to your chiller as well as load side. So the primary variable system with the water cooled or air cooled chillers will make it very simple installation for a typical plant room application. Next one is where you have primary and secondary pumps. where the primary pumps are designed for catering the water from chillers to the up to the secondary pumps, and then the secondary pump will take care of distribution of water to your AHUs or load side based on your application, either 3-way or 2-way valves. And then again, the water will flow back to your typical primary pumps. Of course, condenser pump, if it is a water cooled chiller, or no condenser pump, if it is a air cooled chiller. So this particular scheme will have one more additional set of pumps, which are called secondary pumps. We have typical tertiary pump systems as well, where we have primary, secondary, and maybe tertiary systems where you have particular applications, where you have bigger loops, you have bigger distribution side areas, where you want to have tertiary systems also. The pumps are designed to cater to particular area. So primary pump will circulate the water from chiller to secondary pump. Secondary will have a distribution header from where again tappings are taken, and particularly for that particular zone, tertiary pumps are used. Maybe a heat exchanger used in between, or directly coupled, or some cases the secondary is eliminated and only primary and tertiary pump circuit may be designed where primary will cater the water to the PHEs or the distribution side pumps, and from there typically the pumps are distributing water to the load side and coming back to the primary side. So whenever we are selecting pumps for typical primary or primary secondary or primary secondary tertiary application, it all depends on your type of the building. All schemes has its own advantages as well as its disadvantages, and depends particularly on the schematic or the type of the building, and of course your installation costs, initial investment costs, as well as your operating costs. So type of the schemes are basically decided based on your building design. And whenever it comes to selection of the pumps for particular applications, primary pumps will have to have a consideration of chiller pressure drops and piping pressure drops. And if it is a primary secondary, up to here you calculate the frictional losses and arrive at the primary head. And flow, of course, is arrived by the chiller capacities. And when it comes to secondary pumps, the secondary pumps heads are calculated based on your farthest AHU pressure drop as well as the complete friction losses. As I told, primary and secondary always is a closed loop system where you don't need to have to consider any vertical height of the piping or vertical height of the building when you are calculating the heads for the pumps. It is only the frictional losses which comes to your calculation when it comes to head calculation for the particular pump. When it is cooling tower application, it is an open loop system where water has to be pumped from your condenser outlet to the cooling tower. So that particular vertical height needs to be keep it in mind. But again, when it the water is coming out of the cooling tower and again coming to the section of the pump, that particular section head is added. So differential head, whatever is coming out of the condenser pump, will decide the head of the pump. And any variable application side, whenever you are designing the pump, make sure to have eye on your variable load profiles, based on which maybe you can have a selection of the pumps with the better efficiencies for your part loads. If it is a most of the time, if the building your system is operating at lower loads than the design loads, so that your operating costs out of the pumps are lower by design. So all these parameters are considered for particular designing of the pumps for a chilled water application. So this comes to a end to my presentation, which I hope useful in terms of pumps and pump application for our HVAC systems. I am open for taking the questions. Any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for that wonderful session. I'll just read out the questions to you. The first question was from Mr. Vinod. What is the difference between hydraulic efficiency and overall pump efficiency?
Yeah, Nisha. See, hydraulic efficiency is basically decided based on the BKW of the pump, which is required at the pump shaft. Any particular manufacturer, most of the time we tend to publish the hydraulic efficiency of the pumps because it is the flow head with respect to water, what is generated and what is the power required to generate that water, leaving the efficiency of your motor and VFD. We generally tend to publish hydraulic efficiency because we have typical options of different motor efficiencies. We have IE2 motors, IE3 motors, IE5 motors. So your overall efficiency depends on motor efficiency as well as VFD efficiency. So hydraulic efficiency is nothing but the hydraulic part of the efficiency, which is the power required by the pump shaft. And when you add your losses of the motor and particularly add losses of the VFD and calculate the efficiency, then it becomes overall efficiency. So whatever input power you are giving at your VFD, if it's a VFD driven pump, and output of the pump in terms of flow head will give you overall efficiency of the pumps.
Okay. Next question is, what is the best arrangement for installation of cooling tower and condenser water pump where the pumps can be above the cooling towers?
As I covered, the NPSH availability as well as NPSH required by the pump are the very important parameters whenever we are planning for the installation of a cooling tower pumps. Definitely, pumps cannot be installed above the cooling tower because it will tend to cavitate the pumps. In high-rise buildings, if we have a separate utility block, cooling tower will be placed on a utility block and the pumps are placed in the plant room. Or in some cases, cooling tower is always placed on the top of the building on the terrace and pumps are placed on the plant room. If at all pump and cooling tower has to be on the same level where pumps are installed on the terrace as well as cooling tower is on the terrace, as I mentioned, NPSH availability calculation has to be done before we design the height of the cooling tower. We should ensure that NPSH available at the site, at the section of the pump should be always greater than NPSH required by the pump so that there is no cavitation happens. So whenever we are designing at the design stage itself, cooling tower location has to be decided based on the NPSH available at the cooling tower pumps.
Okay. There is a request for the recording of the video. I request the participants, you can write to ISHRE Bangalore chapter and we can share it. The next question is, please let us know what is the range of flow to decide the type of pump, especially for HVAC applications. The range of, yeah.
See, basically, I can say all flow heads are available with respect to all the type of the pumps. The criteria of deciding either we have to go for end section pump or vertical inline pump or horizontal split case pump should not be decided based on the range of the operation or duty parameter of the pump. It should be decided based on the typical design. Like as I told, whenever we have specifying any pump for that matter, the parameters which I mentioned, it has to have minimum initial investment cost, it should have minimum operating cost, it should have better efficiencies in terms of operation. All those parameters need space requirement. All those parameters needs to be considered for deciding a type of the pump. Of course, this is a valid question which comes to anybody. Generally, pumps are decided based on the flow or head. That's how people decide. But as per our experience is concerned, typical type of the pump has to be decided based on all these parameters. Your operating cost, your installation cost, your maintenance cost, all put together would be a right criteria to decide on the type of the pumps rather than flow or head.
Okay. Next question is, how is the impeller size decided during high pressure drop conditions on the evaporator side of the chiller?
See, for sure, evaporator pressure drops are part of chiller data sheets, and impeller size is see when as I showed in my presentation on affinity law, head values depends on impeller size in a constant speed application. So head is directly, I'll just pull out that slide. in case of a constant speed application, your heads are proportional to your diameter of the impeller by square. So high pressure drop evaporator side will increase your head of the primary pump. So based on the head, the impeller diameter is selected. Generally, in earlier olden days of selection of pumps, particularly people used to calculate it based on the head values, what should be the impeller diameter. And nowadays, with the available softwares, automatically software will calculate heads based on the diameter of the impeller based on the heads. As I mentioned, the heads decide the impeller diameter, and the flow decides the size of the pump.
Okay. The next question is, what is the common alignment tolerance for the pumps for smooth operation?
The alignment of the pump shaft and the motor shaft?
Yes, sir. What is the tolerance for that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact values of the alignment values. Generally, this alignment is done with a scale and level gauge only in terms of end section pumps. But in some cases, we use even the dial gauges also. Nisha, I'll get back to you on this particular question on the tolerances for alignment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get back to you with the values, Nisha. I don't have exact values right now. I'll get back. Yeah.
Next question: why bellows are not required or mandatory in VIL pumps? How vibrations are controlled, which is transferred to chilled water pipes?
As I told, it depends on manufacturer to manufacturer. Since vertical inline design pumps are having a coupling which is aligned. See, this motor is positioned on a pedestal which is self-aligned. All these vertical inline pump designs, whatever are available in the market, are self-aligned, having self-alignment. In case of end section, we have a separate base plate, we have pump, we have motor, and the alignment is done through adjustment of the height here, because we cannot have precise machining of the base plates, which are fabricated items. So you cannot have precise alignment here. So whatever said and done, 100% you match the levels, you will have small misalignments, which is observed through flexible coupling in case of end section design pumps. Whereas in vertical inline design pumps, since the motor is mounted on a pedestal, which is precisely machined, so it has a self-alignment feature. So depends on the pump manufacturer. Some pump manufacturer doesn't have flexible element itself in the coupling. So when this pump shaft and motor shaft are coupled through solid split coupling, this forms the single unit. And since your impeller is rotating horizontally, you don't have vibrations with respect to your gravity. So these pumps have minimum vibration. I cannot say these pumps don't have vibration at all. This will have minimum vibration due to design of the pump itself. So that minimum vibration will be absorbed by the flanges, since if it is directly mounted on the flanges. As I told, it depends on manufacturer to manufacturer. Some manufacturer recommend to use bellows for the vertical inline pumps. Some manufacturer doesn't recommend to have bellows, and it all depends on the vibration level of particular manufacturer.
Okay. What is the efficiency for VIL versus HSC pumps, horizontal split casing pumps? Efficiency.
Again, it cannot be generalized in terms of type of the pumps, because efficiency depends on flow and head. And I can say for sure, for smaller flow rates, definitely some cases, smaller flow rates and medium heads, the horizontal split casing pumps may have better efficiency because it is having a double suction impeller. See, this is a double suction impeller where water enters from both sides of the impeller and comes out as a single outlet. In case of vertical inline, again, in some particular high flow, high head conditions, vertical inlines are much better because again, manufacturer to manufacturer design, some are double section pumps, wherein your hydraulic efficiency or overall efficiencies are better in terms of vertical inline as well. So the efficiency depends on your flow and head, and I can say all the three pumps, end section, horizontal split case, or vertical inline, will have at par efficiency levels for that particular flow and head, because ultimately the efficiency is decided by the pump laws only. So any small variation will happen between type of the pumps based on flow and head conditions.
Okay. Please specify exactly when the tertiary pumps are required.
Yeah, see, whenever your plant room, whenever your building design is where you have various distributed loads, like you have a single centralized plant room and you have various buildings which will be having different capacity of your installed capacities. For example, building A is having a installed capacity of 1500 TR and it has say around 10 floors. And another building where you have only 2 floors of so air conditioned space and only smaller say 300 TR load on that particular building. And one more building where you have only 200 TR load. So in these cases, it is difficult to have a single secondary pumping system to cater to large variation of the loads. In these cases, we tend to have tertiary pumps, particularly it is called zone pumping, which will have particular set of pumps dedicated for main building and another set of pumps dedicated for smaller buildings. So tertiary pump design is mainly recommended when you have distribution side, large variation in your load requirements, and which will decide the flow and head of the pump, which will have large variation in terms of distribution side. So in those cases, we tend to have zone pumping or tertiary pumping system. One more case where tertiary pumps are brought into picture is where you want to have a break between your main circuit and your distribution side, where you have PHs in between. So whenever you are having PHs, for example, high-rise building where you are breaking the circuits into two for larger flow rates, larger floors, where you are breaking the circuits, there you have tertiary pumping system after the PHs.
Okay. What are the limitations of VIP and drawbacks, if any, given the VPF system design? Which is preferred, one-on-one VIP vertical inline or skid mounted?
Can you repeat the question, Nisha? Sorry,
what are the limitations of vertical inline pumps and drawbacks, if any, given the VPF system design? And what is preferred, one-on-one vertical inline or skid mounted?
Okay. In terms of variable primary system, as I told, depends on your building size, typically distribution side, how complicated it is or how simple it is. And to answer the question on dedicated system, definitely there are systems wherein dedicated system, the simple installation pumps can be directly mounted on the section of the chiller and make it as a dedicated system. But these are preferred when you have a complete standby chiller as a operation in the scheme. But when it comes to headed system, that skid system, whatever they say, you will have redundancy in terms of standby operation of the pump. Since you have header, it is not necessarily that this pump will operate for particular A pump will operate for A chiller only, or B pump will operate for B chiller only. So you have option of using interchangeable pumps for different chillers. So our recommendation would be to have headed system and variable primary system with headed system, where you have backup on the pump side for interchangeability of the pumps.
Okay. Is there any difficulty in maintenance of monoblock pump when compared to long coupled pump?
Yes, definitely yes. If it is a smaller flow rate pump, if it is a smaller pump size, monoblock pumps are easy to maintain, where you can see monoblock pumps typically require your complete motor to be dismantled from the assembly. Whereas when it comes to long coupled pumps, you have a bearing assembly, you have a space between the pump and motor shaft where you can dismantle the bearing assembly and take out the access the internal parts of the pump. Monoblock pumps are either it is vertical inline or end section monoblock pumps are is typically suggestible up to around 7.5 kilowatt only. Your motor size is up to 7.5. If it is above 7.5, always split coupled pumps are better. Split flexible pumps are better because you have dismantling of the pump will be easy to access the internal parts with the coupling design.
Okay. We are running ahead of time and there are few more questions, but we will have to close the session here. But I request all the participants who still have questions to please write into ISHRE Bangalore chapter. We will request Mr. Ravi to address them and we will be sharing the answers with all the participants who have requested the same. So on behalf of ISHRE Bangalore chapter, thank you so much, Mr. Ravi, for doing this session. It was truly informative. And I thank all of us. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ISHRE, as well as the participants to give this opportunity to have this presentation. Definitely, this presentation is just a knowledge sharing, maybe based on the questions, as we have a lot of questions. Please share the questions to me, Nisha.
Sure.
That will help us to understand the requirements in more with respect to pumping, and I'll be happy to answer those questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nisha, Arvind here.
Yes, I request Mr. Arvind to please take over.
Yeah, thank you, Nisha. Thank you very much. And I think it was a wonderful session on pumping systems, and it is amazing to know that. And I would just like to intimate you on the membership. I think in the beginning of this.
Mr. Arvind, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you able to hear me now?
Yes, you're audible.
Sorry. Sorry, the initial in the initial program time itself, you would have seen that details of the the membership and also the benefits of the membership for getting into ISHRE. So ISHRE is the Indian Society for Heating and Ventilations, Refrigerations and Engineering Systems. So actually request so to look into this particular things, wherein you will definitely get to meet the professionals around, and then you can enhance your knowledge on the HVAC system, and also you can have the periodicals what is actually currently in trend for the HVAC system, and also you can make a lot of access for all the technical literatures in and around in the entire industry. So these are the benefits which you're going to get from being a member. So I strongly request each and everyone to look into it. That's how best you can utilize this possibility of getting into a ISHRE membership. And the membership fees for the 3 years. It's not for 1 year. It's for the 3 years. It is 8,850 inclusive of GST. So whoever is interested for being a member, please drop in your saying I'm interested in the chat box, or you can directly call to me. My number is 9980921423. So we can be of some support to you, or in the chat box, the Girish has already written his number also, 9731444150. So you can just drop a message. We will be of support to you to complete the activities. Thank you very much. Thanks one and all.
Thank you, Mr. Arvind, for taking us through the benefits of being an ISHRE member. I once again thank all the participants who joined us this evening. I wish you all good health. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.